Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be creating this beautiful card, and I'm going to be using some Holtz Distress Oxide ink pads. I'm also going to be using a cute little stamp set which just has various flower shapes on it, and I'm doing this on a white cardstock, which is a Nina white cardstock to be exact. And I have already pre-measured out the card base for it, and what I'm going to do now is just the card topper and just deciding how big I want this to be. And what I'm going to do is I am going to smush down some different color inks. I'm going to spray it down to kind of create a watercolor effect, and I'm just going to splash it onto my card just by pretty much, as you see me doing here, just laying it on and kind of picking up some of that color. What I'm using in the bottom here, this is just a regular piece of acetate plastic sheet. Any kind of plastic that you have available will work for this technique. So now I'm going to go in with the green, and I will have the colors listed down below in case you're interested in recreating something similar to this. And here I've just done a little line. I just wanted a small little area with some green on it. So I did it in a very kind of controlled kind of way, and just adding that to the bottom. So predominantly the colors that I'm using on the front of this card is gonna be the blue, some green, and some brown. So any of those colors that you have available that you can create some kind of watercolor effects will work. Even watercolors themselves, or even water-based markers, you can do the same thing by just scribbling it onto a piece of acetate plastic and then spraying some water on it and picking it up with some cardstock. You'll be able to recreate this watercolor effect. So now what I'm going to be doing is the same technique, but I'm going to do it on one of the strips of cardstock that I had left over. And this is going to be used for stamping out my flowers. And so I'm going to be adding all different kinds of colors here, so that later on I can go ahead and stamp those out. And then I'm going to be cutting out all the little shapes and creating some kind of dimension on the front of this card. So for this one I'm going to be using some purple, like an orangey color, also a little bit of red, and just kind of laying it all in there. I just wanted to pick up various different layers of all of these bright colors. I don't necessarily need to cover the whole entire area. I just want to make sure that I'm able to get enough flowers just in case. I'd rather have more flowers than have less flowers and have to do this process over again. So I made sure that I had a nice wide area to do this. So while I let my paper dry, and it does dry rather quickly, I'm going to go ahead and start stamping out some of the images. And I think I'm going to be using most of the flowers that are on here, at least the bigger flowers that are on here I'm going to be using. And this stamping tool that you see here is a stamping tool that I created. I don't have a video on this, but this is my upgraded version from my Corky 2.0, which is the original stamping tool that I created. This is in a very different way, and it doesn't require any hinges or anything like that. And it also opens up from the side as opposed to from the top. If this is something that you're interested in seeing, or you would like to create your own, then definitely let me know. If I get enough people requesting a tutorial on how I created this, then I'll definitely get one going. So now what I'm looking for is the colors that I'm going to be using to stamp out some leaves. So I'm going to be using a little bit of green and a little bit of yellow. And again, I'll have the colors down below. And again, just doing the same technique so that I can have a nice kind of blended out watercolor effect. And this is the regular distress ink that I'm using here, and it's in a darker shade. I think it's moss, something moss. I will, like I said, I will have all the names for you down below. But you can also go ahead and recreate this again with any kind of water soluble markers, pens, pencils, or paints. So I'm just using my finger to stamp this out. It's a very tiny stamp, and I figured I could do them faster if I used my fingers. So I'm just using the stamp and just kind of stamping it out. And again, just making sure that I stamp out more than I need, so that I can go ahead and just have plenty of little leaves. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the process of cutting it, but I will cut this process short for you guys, so you won't have to see me, you know, cutting out all these little pieces. I'll be back when all the pieces are ready to go. So we have all of our little pieces, and my cardstock is nice and dry. So what I'm going to do now is, because I would like to create some kind of a border around this, I'm going to go ahead and use a scallop scissor. And although these scissors can be a little tricky, I really do like the way that it does scallop the entire edge. So I'm going to distress it just a little bit more, make it a little bit darker. And then I'm going to proceed to scallop the entire area around the card topper. And I'm trying not to remove too much of it. But in the event that you want to be precise, then you can go ahead and use a ruler on the back side and just cut along that line. I just kind of free-handed it, but it did come out okay. And then with my scissors, just making sure that I get any little pieces that are left over, because since the paper was wet from the adding the, you know, the colors and stuff, it's not so easy, I would say, to go ahead and do this, just because the paper is a little bit more vulnerable. You can also choose to do this beforehand, so before you even create your watercolor effects, you can go ahead and scallop the edges first. You could also do this by hand if you don't have a scallop scissor. Just create some kind of distressed looking edge all around the perimeter of your card base, you know, your card topper. So here I'm just using some regular craft glue to kind of glue this down. And I'm gonna add a little bit of distress distress ink to the flowers in purple and red, just to bring out the colors a little bit more. You can also do this with a brush if you wish. You can also do the same technique with a brush if you want to have more control over where your colors kind of fall. The main reason why I'm doing this is because I didn't want all of the flowers to look exactly the same. I wanted there to be some variation between each of the little flower buds. So what I'm doing now is just applying some of the darker green that I have, and I'm going to be cutting up some strips. These are going to be the stalks for the flowers, or the stems. And with a wet brush or a damp brush, I'm going to go ahead and move some of that color around, because these inks are water reactive, so they do work very much like watercolor. And I won't be using the entire length of these. I will be trimming these down to various sizes, just to give, you know, just to make them larger and smaller. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to apply some double-sided foam tape. And I've trimmed that down to make it a little bit smaller just because they were a little bit big. And I wanted it to hide behind the flower. I didn't want to have that tape poking out through the corners and stuff. And I've left 3 of them as they are without any dimension, and I'm going to be applying those directly onto the card topper. So here I'm just kind of playing around and seeing how I want this, what is the layout that I would like to use. So just playing around with the different sizes and different order and making sure that I have enough. Originally I thought I was going to be able to fit in all 9 of the flowers, but eventually I end up figuring out that I do not have enough room to put them all there comfortably in the way that I wanted them to be. So I start by placing the very center one first, so that I can gauge more or less how much distance I need between flower to flower. And there's many ways that you can do this process. You don't necessarily have to use the same layout that I'm using, but that's just the way I chose to do the front of this card. Some of these stems I'm going to trim down in half just because it was too thick and the flower was a little bit smaller. So just so that it looks somewhat more normal, I will go ahead and trim some of these in half. Overall, I really did like how this card came out. I think it's a super sweet card, especially for you know, just a simple thank you or things of that nature. I will actually be making quite a few of these types of cards within the next couple of days and weeks, because I do have a challenge going on right now, and I'm hoping that I will be able to send out some thank you cards to the people that participate on my challenge. Adding some of the additional little leaves here and there just to fill up some of that empty space, and just make sure that everything looks nice and cute. Now I'm going to try to create a little grassy area where these you know, these flowers are sprouting from. So I'm going in with a big permanent marker. And this is kind of like a very lime greenish kind of color. I will also be using some Faber-Castells to also add a little bit more depth and add a little bit more detailing on the ground. And I'm just kind of dotting it in just a little bit. I'm just kind of, you know, like I said, just dotting it all in and just filling in the area with little tiny dots. This is overall a very simple card to create and also recreate, and if you get all your pieces together, then you can definitely create quite a few of these cards in a very short amount of time. So now I'm going to be adding the hello part to this card, which is a stamp that's also included in the little flower stamp set, which is perfect. So I'm using Memento Black to just kind of stamp that in, and my card is ready to go. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed this process. If you've not subscribed, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. Goodbye.